So what we're going to do is we're here to expose it, let people tell their story, and let everybody in the public see the horrors of the court system in Suffolk County, New York.
Long Island Backstory.
Hi, I'm Gary Jacobs, and welcome back to another edition of Long Island Backstory, where we're filming at the Cablevision Studios, now known as the Alt T Studios in Hop Hog, New York. As many of you know who watch this show, one of the things I'm very interested in is divorce because of personal issues I had, and as president of Americans for Legal Reform, and trying to help people not go through the horrible pain that many people do go through here, especially in Long Island, where we have a corrupt judicial system that's coming out. But this corrupt system just destroys lives. I don't really see any end to this. We're not going to change the laws overnight. So what I do is I try to counsel people to, if possible, try to go to mediation. So my next guest today is Dana Greco and Don Desroches from the Mediation and Family Counseling Group. These guys are a little bit different. Dan and Don have a unique approach to mediation in that they co-mediate every session so that people feel completely supported by both Dana and Don. They both complement each other's skills, and I know them very well, so I do know that They really work very well together. And Dana is also a licensed couples and family therapist and divorce coach, and Don is a certified divorce financial analyst. Both are also certified mediators. But it's a lot of stuff. But your experience and the fact that you have education as far as counseling people. I also really do think that it makes a difference having a woman there too, because a lot of the mediators, or most of the mediators, are men, and some women feel like, well, if it's a man, he's going to be on my husband's side. So having a woman there, I think, also gives a different perspective, and I believe you both have been through divorces, so you've both been there, you both have children, you both had to co-parent, so you've been around, and you've experienced the horrors personally of the court system here. Don and Dana also co-authored a book, which I'm going to show here, called Conscious Coupling, to help couples improve their relationships. As mediators, they've learned that triggers that put couples onto the path of divorce, and they wanted to share as many things as they can to save the marriage, which is also, again, different because where many people, if you're a mediator or divorce attorney, you're not there to try to talk yourself out of business. You guys get the business either way because you can counsel them, if they need help in their divorce. Because I think a lot of times, when you go to buy a gun, there's a cooling off period. You can't just walk in, buy a gun, and walk out because you may be pissed off and shoot somebody. And I think with divorce, it would be good to have a cooling off period too, because you may have a horrible weekend, a really bad fight. You go to a divorce attorney, and he goes, "Son of a bitch, what that guy do to you? What a prick he is! Let's file for divorce." And now in your mind, you're done. You're not even you don't have an open mind anymore. Whereas if you maybe take some time to cool down, go to a mediator, go to a couples therapist. Now you may say, "Hey, I think you guys should get divorced." You may say, "Hey, let's stick it out," but at least make it civil, leading into it. So
there's also been some people that we've reconciled as well. So there's been situations where a couple comes in and Dana actually sees them, and she sees something in them and says, like, "No, you're not divorcing." So there's been a couple of clients like that.
But it's because I know that their choice of divorce, to decide to divorce, is not really based on anything other than hurt feelings and ego, and there's a way to resolve this and we can move forward. So actually, I'm working with couples that came to us in mediation, and now we're in my practice for couples counseling.
That's great.
Yeah.
Let me get just to start.
I'm sure an attorney would do that, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. What's the difference between co-mediation, regular mediation, and collaborative divorce?
Well, the one thing that you had mentioned before is the fact that Dana is in the room when we're mediating, and I think that makes a big difference in some cases because there's a man and a woman in every session, and both of us have different skill sets, as you mentioned before.
And different sensibilities.
And different sensibilities. And the thing is, we actually get through. So the two of us together are kind of working through the process. So we're not both talking at the same time. I'll kind of go through the checklist of items that we have to go through, and then Dana will basically, kind of chime in whenever there's an emotional component that comes up, and also
I'm paying
different
attention
things.
to the climate of the room because the decisions that are made emotionally cannot, sometimes be backfire.
Right.
So, the practice is not to make a decision based on a lot of emotion.
So you're keeping the heat down.
We've got to keep the heat down so that they're making a decision based on logic rather than emotion.
And if your adrenaline's going, I mean, common sense. If your adrenaline is, up to here, how are you going to think clearly?
No,
that's not the time to make a life decision.
And I've seen it escalate, and I go, you know what? We're going to take some time. We're going to break, and we're going to have just kind of calm down, because when the adrenaline goes up, our decision making, is.
You can't even listen.
Well,
they're not even hearing. The auditory system shuts down.
That's right.
Okay.
And the other thing too is that I think we find a lot of resistance in some cases. And it's not even just the anger, it's also the resistance when people don't want to make a decision, or they're afraid to make a decision, or they're maybe they just don't want to make a decision because of their ego. There's all different reasons why.
Because they're bringing the dynamic of what was going on in the marriage to the,
which obviously didn't work.
And it didn't, and so they fight the same way they did, when they were in the marriage.
Right.
But one of the things we try to do is we try to remove the marital component, and let's look at it as mature adults sitting in the room, and we applaud them on that. We celebrate that. But you went back. You want to ask us, what the difference between co-mediation and mediation and collaborative. It's very important that. The mediation, you're not represented by anyone other than yourself. You're just self-determined. We're neutral parties. We don't take sides. We can't be biased. We, help you make a decision what's best on your end. Now, the co-mediation is like Don said. I'm the therapist. I watch the emotion in the room. Sometimes I'll stop the process and say, I feel like you're making a decision based on something that you're not going to be happy with later on for some whatever reason. We'll talk about why the marriage broke down, because sometimes there needs to be an apology. Sometimes there needs to be some reconciliation, some kind of clarity, some kind of understanding, a deeper understanding as to why the marriage broke down.
And talk about that a little more, because I think when people go to court, they want to get their pound of flesh. They want to go to trial, have their day in court, and it's maybe they need, and some people need that. I really do believe. I tell people sometimes, and I've felt like that at times, you know what? I don't care if I lose. I want to get my day in court. And I want to tell my side. So the fact that you discuss this and you resolve these issues so that they're not hanging over.
That's right. You have to, because there needs to be some forgiveness, even though it's tough. You've come to mediation because you want to end it amicably. You want to be mature. You don't want to, be people that are, that you don't want to be the kind of ugliness that shows up in litigation.
Because when you go to court, somebody cheats, for example. The judge, I don't care that person cheated. I'm here talking. They just don't give a shit.
Right,
they're talking about your money, and you're like, wait a minute.
That's
I'm hurt. My spouse cheated on me.
Hey, listen, we've had clients where I say, so what was the reason the marriage broke down? And she'll say, why didn't you tell them? And he'll say, I went outside the marriage. And so we talk a little bit about that. And then I'll bring up, well, let's talk about the responsibility on your end as far as the spouse that felt betrayed. And I hold her accountable. Not
or
entirely.
Either
way. And then there's a whole other, sort of feeling in the room, because they want to blame the other, and I let them know that it's really both parties, that the reason this person strayed has something to do with the needs that weren't being met in the marriage. So it humbles them a little bit, and then they can kind of start.
They can start to move forward.
Yeah, they need to work
there's
forward.
also times where people come into the session and they're not talking. They took separate cars. They come in. They're separate. They're sitting as far away as they possibly can.
Yeah.
But then after we go through, and sometimes it's a matter of just letting one scream at the other.
Yeah,
and as long as it's a safe environment and we don't let it go on too long, they actually end up walking out together and start talking again.
Because the goal is to restructure the relationship so that they can be parents together. The thing is that they are going to be parents and people in each other's lives for a long time. And we always say, you're going to want to be at the children's events. You're going to want to see your grandchild. You're going to want to be at those first birthday parties. You're going to be at the wedding. So they start to think about the future, and most likely they want to be good people. They don't want to have this kind of anger hanging over their head.
And when you're in court, it's just the opposite. They tell you, do not talk. Now that you hired me, you do not talk to the spouse. You don't
the lawyer
communicate.
says that.
The lawyer, right? The lawyer says
Right.
you do not. Anything
right.
goes through me. I will talk to.
know.
I'll send a letter to her lawyer.
And we encourage each
We
other.
encourage communication,
Yeah.
right.
So
And the
we
problem is,
say,
like you said, when now you're out of court. Now, how do you move forward? How do you do these parties? I almost never, after people go through a divorce, a contested divorce, there's no shared Thanksgivings or birthday, and it's really sad because
It's so sad.
you won't, whether it's a christening, a bar mitzvah,
it's horrible. Who's
a
going to go?
wedding.
Oh, your mother's going to
It's
go. Your
horrible.
father's going to
It's
go. If your
horrible
father's
for the
going,
kids.
I'm not
It's
going.
It's really bad for
It
the kids.
really puts a burden on the kids. Really does put a burden on the kids.
Well, not
And
only
it's so
that, you know what?
unfair.
I think that a big difference with mediation and litigation is the fact that we can actually come up with solutions that nobody in court would ever think about.
Yeah. We
You know,
can
like
be
maybe put it,
creative.
maybe where the woman or the man goes into the marital home and acts for 2 hours for dinner or whatever, while the other spouse goes and
Goes
heads
to the
out,
gym.
goes to Starbucks or goes to the gym or whatever.
that
and
would
they
never-
they would never say that in
No,
court.
they would never
ever.
suggest that. Hey, you know, we offer, like, you know, do you think you can go in and put your kid to bed and she can be out? And they're like, yeah, you know, and that's okay. And we talk about significant others, you know, and how's that going to be when the significant other comes in the picture. And, you know, most likely, because of mediation, they are able to accept the fact that each of them are going to move on, and they can accept that there's going to be a significant other.
And
Now-
how many times in court would you see that? They don't even talk about significant others.
No, they make it a significant other, like, you know, it's going to be another betrayal, another injury, another wound. But getting back to, I want to talk about collaborative, because collaborative is another option that a lot of people don't know. It's when you each have a representative. So you can use a lawyer, but they contract not to go to court still. So, you know, again, we're still not in court, but they
Do
use-
you do this collaborative divorce?
we have done collaborative
We're,
divorce.
we're both certified.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm certified as a financial neutral in collaborative, and Dan is certified as a divorce
So a
coach in
collaborative would be a
collaborative.
team of 4 plus the couple.
Sounds more expensive.
It
It is
is.
more expensive, but some would
But
rather
it's still better
have
than litigation.
still
So
cheaper
you're saying
than
like the
litigation.
first choice would be just a regular
mediation
mediation,
with
Yeah.
the two of
but
us.
if that doesn't work, maybe even do have people come to that and they go, look, this isn't working, screw them, I'm going to court, and then you can say, you know what, if you feel you want to have attorney,
Yeah.
still you're better off
That's right.
doing collaborative.
I think what people don't realize with litigation is they both give in a $5,000 retainer to start with. I think they don't realize by the time they see the judge, it's actually $40,000 in the hole for each of them. And people
low.
don't realize that, and that could be low.
And that's if
and
it just
could be
goes
low.
through the normal process. If it goes into like other types of litigation, when there's a dispute of child, like I know lots of people, it's been going on for years. We're up to
I was in court
200,000.
for 11 years, and I would love to have spent $200,000.
Yeah.
See, that's
Well,
what
that's-
we're
I
trying
tell
to
people you're
avoid.
not going to get out in a contested divorce with custody with the spouse who doesn't want to fight. You are not going to get out spending less than $100,000 per person. You're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Who wants to
I
spend
think
that
that's
kind of
right.
money
I
when
think
that
that's
money
right.
could be spent on the children?
Also, that many years of your life.
Right. So who
Oh,
would you have rather given it to, the lawyers or the kids?
Right.
You know, that's
Well, you gave it
really
to
what
the
it
lawyers'
comes down
kids,
to.
you know,
You
they
know,
can pay for his college,
and
kids'
sometimes what we say too, when we get to a point where we're arguing over maybe $10,000, we say, hey, why don't we give it to the kids?
Mm-hmm.
Let's set up an account for the kids for college or whatever. You're arguing over this money. How about we give it to the kids? And a lot of times they say, oh yeah,
I
that
know.
makes sense. You know?
Yeah, and they're like, I never even thought of that.
Right.
Half the time we hear them say, I never even thought about it, never even thought about it. And that's what's so great about the two of us, because we brainstorm. Sometimes we'll be very transparent and we'll talk to each other and not like, you know, and have them sit there and watch us talk
Yeah.
about.
But they're also
things.
learning how to
They're
negotiate
learning
it
from
too,
us,
yes.
subconsciously.
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly. And sometimes, you know, it's like when we see one person being resistant, and then, you know, we start talking about that resistance between us and what we think is happening, they then start to realize how they're actually looking.
And it takes
like-
some of the pressure off of them too, because they've been like sort of under the gun while they're talking, and then they take a break. They can sit back and think about what's actually happening while they're listening to us talk. So it kind of gives them
There's
a little
bit of
breathing
breather.
space.
And also the nice thing is there's not as much of a time constraint, you know.
No.
Whereas when you go to court, you're in and out in 3 minutes.
That's right.
First of all, you're waiting in the miserable hallway for sometimes 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, and it's sterile and it feels
it's
cold.
cold
and you
and
see
it's-
lawyers
everybody's
running around.
miserable.
And not only that,
That's
but you see
right.
lawyers running
That's
around
right.
with their file folders of every other case that they
Case.
have. So you're just another number
It's
to
a
them.
miserable. It's a miserable place. But I think so. Number one, that you have the time; they're not being rushed out.
Our
and number
office
two, the
is
environment.
warm and inviting and
So
comfortable.
you're in an office building, or
We're in an office.
more of like a
home
therapist
office.
office.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll I think just being in a home.
Yes,
Sure.
Is
and not
it
only where we are is
not a
very
threat?
discreet.
Well, it's not all
It's
of them
discreet.
home. Yeah.
No, but yes, we have several offices.
Where
we
are
should
your
mention
offices
that.
located?
So
'Cause-
we're from Long Island all the way to the Bronx.
We
So
have
in
Manhattan. We have Manhattan office. We have
Long
one in
Island.
Riverdale and 4 on
Long Island.
Okay.
So we are accessible. We're on the weekends. We try to work around their schedule. The thing too is that we know that you work during the day. We know you need to work. So we don't want to ask that you come in during your work day. We'll meet you at night.
Which is
We'll
important.
meet you on
People
the
don't
weekend.
realize if you're going to court,
You have to
they
take
have
the
you
day
come back
off.
every
Actually.
single month,
And you
That's
have to
right.
take the day off.
and you can't plan, because it could be, you can't just say, oh, I'll be back, I'll go there from 9 to, they have you come in at
No,
9.
I know,
But
and
many
you sit there
times
all
they make
day.
you stay till after lunch,
Not only that,
so.
you're sitting there with your ex-spouse, it's already toxic.
Right.
So it's, no, and the other thing too is like you're sitting there in court and you don't know if you're even going to be seen by the judge, right? And that could
I
be
would say
dismissed.
most often, you don't see it. You go there thinking you're going to see a judge, and then they go, okay, parties on Jane Doe and Smith, and the attorneys only. The attorneys go in the back, they go into a conference room, and they walk out, and I always laugh because both attorneys go, it went great for us. It went great for us.
Right,
and then they walk away, you just spent $2,000.
Yeah, because they're making money. That's why it
Right.
went great
Well,
for them.
There's also situations where the judge doesn't even show up for the day.
Sometimes
But
you don't even know it, though.
They don't even
don't
tell
know it.
anybody.
They don't even
They don't
tell
tell
you in
anybody, and then you go there, you're spending attorney fees, and then you have to leave.
And you got a day off.
And
You
you got
had
a
to
day
take a
off,
personal day or a sick
And people
day.
don't understand that if you're going to go through a contested divorce here in Suffolk County, you're looking at 2 to 3 years, and you're looking at coming back every single month. So you're looking at about 30,
Okay.
at least, visits to the court.
So
30 days off from work.
I
That's not a
know.
vacation.
So we are trying to educate the public. We don't want to see divorces. We don't want to see families break up. But if you choose that that's the best route for the family, then let us mediate you. Don't go through the court system. But how do we educate them? How do we get the word out?
But that's
Because
also
we don't
a good-
know, they
yeah.
don't see the horror of going into
They
the
don't,
court
because
system.
if it's your
And we
first divorce,
try and warn
especially.
them.
I think the second time, people
They're
were
a
like,
lot
I'd love to
smarter.
go. I'd love to go to somebody like you guys. But the first divorce,
They don't see
They
the
don't see
harm.
it.
We
But
try
why
to
not try
explain
it
to
out?
them.
But why not try it out?
I think
you know, the
that's-
thing is like
listen,
if
why
you
not
could
try
try
it?
out a
Do
mediation
one
What do you have to
session,
lose?
you
There's
do
no,
one
there's
session.
no retainer.
Oh,
You
really?
pay
Right.
as you go.
You pay as you go.
That's
And-
interesting.
And the thing is, you make an appointment, you're going to see us. We're not going to call the day, like dismiss the day, or
Right,
like say, oh,
adjourn.
sorry, we decided not
Right.
to come
Right.
in the office today, but pay us anyway.
Right.
Right.
So we make an appointment, you show up, we block 2 hours the first time, and pretty much that first 2 hours, you get a lot done.
do you have consultations?
We'll do a free phone consultation on the, like I said, on the phone. Or if you want to
Or
come
in
in and
person,
meet us.
yeah.
Sometimes they want to feel like, they want to get to know us, and we'll have a consultation with them, free of charge.
Yeah.
What
But
would
the-
you say percentage of people who come in? Because I think the hardest thing is getting somebody in the door. Or getting both parties in the door.
Yes, because sometimes you'll have one that says, I'm done, I want out, but, he's not really resistant. We need both of you to agree. You
I
need
would
to
say
be a
mo-
candidate for mediation.
I would say most of the time, the two people are in different emotional phases of
Which
the
is
divorce.
another point, because the nice thing about mediation is we schedule the process according to where you are emotionally. Not like the courts where they put you on a calendar,
Right.
and then whether you're in a good mood or bad mood or wherever you're feeling and you didn't sleep the night before, you have to show up. We watch the pace of the emotional, because there's
Yes.
grieving
Of
happening.
course, it's a grieving process.
Okay,
yeah.
so there's
Right.
a lot of adjustments, a lot of anxiety. So we don't run you through the process faster than it's comfortable for you. So we
And some take
it-
longer than others. I mean, we tell
Yep.
people sometimes, you know what, why don't you take a break for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. Let's think about this a little bit. We give them some homework to do where they can look up some things, maybe talk about things with the kids and all that. And then they can come back at that point when they're ready. We've had some that they waited a year and then came back. And you know what? When they came back, it's like boom, 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 we went through everything. So, sometimes that little bit of time makes sense. And the thing that's also different between mediation and collaborative is that sometimes people can't make that decision for themselves, so they need somebody on their side to say, like, you know what, this is a pretty
is a
good
good
deal.
deal.
It's a good deal.
It's like, this is what you should do, and
Maybe
some
somebody's
people
in a
can't.
marriage where they didn't make the decisions.
Maybe.
They're not used to making the decisions.
Yeah, we see a lot of that. That's the
Yeah.
other thing too. As a therapist, I also pay attention to what's going to happen in the future, and those who maybe been at home, didn't work, and that goes both ways. Some dads have been home not working, the mom's been out working. We also talk about what's your future going to look like. How can we
What are
help
your
you
goals?
get your
Of course, don't
What are
look
your
at it all.
goals? What are your
No.
goals?
Because I think there's a lot of fear going through a divorce, and I've seen a lot of times people get to the divorce, they'll spend all their money, they're pissed, now they're at 3 years, and they say, okay, judge goes, settle, okay, we're going to settle. And then they get all the papers written up and they agree, and usually the wife backs out right at the end because they get scared.
Yeah.
They go, oh my God, what am I going to do? Now I don't
know.
have somebody pay.
That's
I
right.
had my ex paying my bills for 15 years,
and I understand
doing all
that.
these things, and then it starts, then the process starts all
All
over
over
again.
again.
All over again, and I
it's
know
because
it's
they're
coming.
afraid.
It's because
They-
they're
they are
afraid.
because they're
Nobody's
afraid.
told them what you're going to
That's
do.
right.
Of course.
It's like letting a person out of jail after 15 years go hit the streets. They don't know how to get
And
a
they
job.
have no skills.
No skills.
Not only that, they have small children at home. They know that they can't work a full-time job. And we're sensitive to that.
Well,
we
we
talk
fo-
about
we-
They
that.
may not have experience.
But
and
We
No,
do
exactly.
find that a lot of times the finances are the ones that kind of bring them to that point where they're afraid, because it's not really the other things with the kids and all that. They're not really afraid of how the kids
Right, it's the
are gonna
finances. They're
behave.
afraid of,
It's
where the
it's
money-
always
Security.
the financials and
It's security.
Security, exactly.
So when we say, listen, you're going to mediate, you're going to get the support of your ex, right? And we don't like to call him ex, but you form a partner, because the fact that you're getting along, you're going to go to work, and that other person is going to help you with the children. Whereas sometimes you don't want to ask because it's been ugly and litigated and all that. You're not going to rely on the ex. So the fact that they're getting along and they've restructured the relationship, she feels better about going to work because she knows that he's going to be there to pick up the slack.
Well, let me ask you, I think one of the, people have asked me in my case, because I had a very ugly divorce, and people would always say, well, why did it have to go this far? Why couldn't you stop it? I'm telling you right now, there's not a shot in hell my ex-wife would have agreed to meet with you. It takes two to do this.
absolutely.
But how do you
It
do it? If
definitely
one,
takes
let's say
two.
the guy's been divorced, he's been through, I don't want to go through another trial, I want to use mediation. He goes in alone to you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you ever pull that other person in, or do they have to show up to get? Do they have to speak to that person on their own and say, "Hey, honey, let's go"? Not honey, because you
Well,
get this.
sometimes-
Let's go to mediation. How do you?
No,
how
no,
does
no,
this work?
Sometimes it's a point of us actually speaking with the other person and just finding out where they're
But what would
at.
you say, Don? Would they say to you, let's say I want to go, and I say to my ex, look, I want to go to mediation. Do me a favor. It's not going to cost you anything. Just speak to these people.
Well, the thing is this, there's a couple of, we have to find out again what the resistance is.
Right.
Sometimes the resistance is the fact that they don't want to get divorced. Like, it's not that they want to go to court, they just don't want to get divorced.
Right, okay.
So
Things
that,
are working well for them.
right,
the
that's the
situation
first
is.
hurdle to
Right.
get over. So, you have to talk to them about that, and just basically, they do have to get to the right emotional stage, and sometimes it's a matter of time.
Right.
That you do have
They
to
also
wait.
have to, get to know us a little bit. We've had a case where he had been wanting this for a long time, and he had been working on trying to get an appointment and trying to get us to get the wife, and we finally got through her. And once she spoke to us, once she heard what we were about and how we were going to move this thing along and what her possible options would be, she came right along. And then you know what happened? She started running the mediation. She did all the
So you
homework.
would suggest if, say, a wife says, look, I want to go through mediation, but I want to get divorced, but I don't want to have a big battle, I don't want to do all this. She would come to you first, and then would she say, look, I'm afraid to even bring this up to my
Yes,
husband?
right.
And
You have to have that.
you could say, here's my husband's phone number.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing you
Yes.
have to be
Yep.
careful with that is make sure that you don't talk about the case specifically, because we don't want to become biased in any way.
Right.
So we have to be careful not to provide any information that's specific to their case, and we can't discuss their case with them separately. So it's just a matter of the process and understanding how we,
explaining.
And then, at that point, if we need to bring the other person in, sometimes what we do is we say, hey, why don't you come in to find out if you guys should divorce or stay together? Sometimes that's the situation. So they'll come in and they'll talk about either reconciling.
It's more like a therapy session
It's
first.
a therapy
Yeah, it could
session
be.
initially. So we could start from that perspective and then figure out what the right approach is next.
Now, somebody used it. Does anybody ever have to go to court? Or do they literally never have to step a foot? I mean, you file papers,
We
They
do all the
never have to
filing.
go to court.
They do all- we do all
we
the
do
filing.
everything.
so they could literally get divorced
They never
and
go
never
before
have
a
to step
judge.
a foot.
They don't have to talk to a lawyer. They
and
could
they
talk to a lawyer, but they don't have to either. Like
They
we
never
could
go
handle
before
everything.
a judge.
Right.
Nope.
That's
And
great.
then when the divorce is decreed and it's disposed, we let them know.
Right.
You know,
Now, we talked about the financial aspect of it too, because some people may just say, hey, I just want to do this because I don't want to spend all the money. And as I said earlier, it's not uncommon in a contested divorce between the two parties to spend $200,000. It's often higher. So, what is the range in
I would say
using
$3,000
it?
to $5,000. That's the
All
range.
in, including
all
filings
All in,
and-
everything.
The
3,000 to
whole-
5,000.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
That's on our.
It's almost
Yeah.
worth it. Even if you're happy, you should spend the $5,000.
Well,
That's a great deal.
If you go to one attorney,
I love a
and
good
you-
deal.
Go through the process
But
anyway.
Gary, if you go to one attorney and give him $5,000, the other person has to then go to an attorney and give him
the cost- It's
$5,000.
less than half of it's
Just a
it's less than
retainer.
one retainer.
And it's interesting. You said that you pay to go. So really, what are the risks of trying this first?
The risk is that you end up in court and you
But I
have
mean,
to
the
pay
risk
that.
of trying
But
it
the
is-
risk is like
nothing,
a
right?
session.
A session.
It's
There's
it's
no
less.
downside.
It's less than
There's no downside.
$1,000 to try out.
Right.
The only thing that you could see is probably like we had a couple cases where it was sort of escalated, and other ones didn't listen, and they couldn't hear each other, and they really didn't want to. They couldn't work together. You got to agree to agree.
Have you ever said to somebody, "Look, you guys can't mediate. This is never going to work. Go to court."
No, we've never said go to court.
No,
We just said, why don't
never.
we give it some time?
Right,
Why
that's
don't you
the
come in,
only-
let's have some individual counseling, let's talk about it over the phone. No, we never throw them to the courts.
Now, could you do custody?
Do
Oh,
we do
absolutely.
custody? Yeah.
No. We could do
Parenting.
a parenting plan. That's usually the first thing that we do when we start the mediation.
Most cases, they're joint, right? I mean.
Yeah.
And from my experience is that when people have joint custody or real shared custody that they both like, that they were both a part of, the compliance is well over 90%.
Yeah.
Where when you go to court and you're forced and it's jammed down your throat and nobody's happy, the compliance, from my experience, is less than 10%.
It absolutely
sense?
is less than
Less
10%.
than 10%.
I would have.
I would say
Why
it's-
should they? Why should they?
I would-
comply? Why should they?
I would
why
have
should they
to say
cooperate?
that, Gary, with the cases that we've had, there's been 2 that have gone to court after the fact.
And you've done a lot of
Too.
places. I remember when I went to an attorney in the city, Raoul Felder, and he asked for a huge retainer, and it was $100,000. So I gave him a $100,000 retainer. He burned through it, and I got pissed at him. I said, you burned through my $100,000. And he said, Mr. Jacobs, you think I need your money? I said, well, it's a lot of money.
spent it.
It's a lot of money. He said, I'm not making my money on this. You know where I'm making my money? He said, your crazy ass wife gets her rocks off, making you miserable and turning the kids against you, and you're going to be in the court for the next 15 years.
Right,
And
that's
I'm going to
the
make a
problem.
hell of a lot more money after the divorce than I
Right.
am on. And guess what? He was right. He
was
didn't make
right.
the money, but I spent it all after because my wife never complied
Oh my God.
with the
No.
agreement.
Well, the
We
thing
don't-
that we
don't work
find,
like that.
the
We don't
thing
work
that
like
we
that.
find also is that a lot of times that when there is an issue, and we tell people, listen, and this is something that maybe divorce attorneys don't do either, but we say, hey, listen, we don't stop here at the divorce. Like, if there's ever a problem in the future, just call us.
And I think that's very comforting for somebody to know that they can come back.
We just had
Yeah,
a call
and
on
we've-
Sunday. We were on our way somewhere. We got a call from somebody and said, I just wanted to ask you one question. He was asking about how to get should he invite his wife to Thanksgiving dinner or something like that with significant, just, these kinds of questions
With a
come up.
significant
Right,
other.
because they'd been apart for like over 2 years, and he didn't want to leave the ex-wife out because they mediated. And so we talked a little bit about that. And, in a half hour, he felt more reassured. Thank you very much. Boop, and that was it.
And that was it, right.
We're with you forever.
And that's a big thing, having somebody, I think, knowing that you're not going to do it, be done. Like a lawyer, they do it, use up your retainer, now you're done. You want to come back because you got another issue? Give me another retainer.
Right, but the
I
only
know.
thing is it's a legal procedure thing instead of just a discussion
Right.
about what the emotional issue is at that time.
I've gotten to know you guys over the years, and not only that you're really nice people, but you're very caring people, and you don't want people to go through the pain because you've both been activists for reform, and you've seen the pain that people go through. So, and I know there has to be lawyers, but I sort of have an issue with people benefiting so greatly from people's misery. And an attorney, the more miserable you are, the more they drag it out, the more money they make.
Absolutely.
You have no
They see it.
incentive.
No, we
Well, that's
don't.
why we wrote the
do
book.
this.
That's
So
right, it
so read the book. Conscious coupling.
Be
Read the
conscious.
book.
Be conscious in your divorce as well. And the other thing I want to say is that lawyers don't pay attention to what happens with one of the spouses may have like early childhood trauma, and the lawyers kind of like don't acknowledge that. And you have to be really careful about what's happening to the individual when a divorce process is happening, because they're getting triggered and kicked up a lot of childhood
Interesting.
stuff. And so we, as a therapist, I'm paying attention to a lot that's what's happening, because there's another loss, there's another abandonment, there's another rejection, there's a whole lot of other stuff that's happening.
So I
not just
really
because
believe
of the marriage.
that women would and I know I've sent people to you before, and they come to me and say, I need the best lawyer. Don't go to the
No.
best lawyer, please. Go see Don
Right.
and Dana.
First.
You have nothing to lose. Don't even go to your lawyer and meet with them. And everybody's watching it. Really, I feel very strongly about this. Try mediation. You have nothing to lose. I'm telling you from personal experience, and a lot of you get to know me personally or just seen me on the TV show. I feel very strongly about this. It's very important. Court sucks. It's a miserable place. You will not be happy. There is no winner, because even the person who, quote, wins, loses, and 100% of the time, the children lose. 100% of the time, the lawyers win. The litigants, there is no win. Everybody comes out unhappy, and you'll be in court till your child turns 22 years old. So go to mediation. If it's not Don and Dana, try another one. But I like this thing, and there's always issues, and having a therapist there is great. Thanks so much, guys,
All right,
for being on
thank
the
you.
show.
Thanks
We're going to
for
run the
allowing
number on the bottom of the screen where people can reach you. They can get you on Facebook. They can Google you. They can get your book online.
Absolutely.
great.
Great.
I'm Gary Jacobs, and again, thank you for joining us on Long Island Backstory, especially on this very important episode.
Long Island Backstory.